The morning sun glowed softly over Hillcrest Estate, painting the marble gates of the Okoro mansion in hues of gold. From afar, the home looked like a palace of peace-tall palm trees swaying gently, fountains whispering luxury, and the soft laughter of staff preparing breakfast. To the world, Amara Henry-Okoro lived the life most women dreamed of. She had beauty, wealth, and a husband whose every photo seemed sculpted for magazine covers. In Likora's high circles, they were known as the couple of grace and power Chinedu Okoro, the brilliant real estate mogul, and his elegant wife, daughter of the late Chief Henry Nadozi, founder of the empire now bearing her father's name. But inside the mansion, silence had begun to speak louder than love. Amara sat at the dining table, her slender fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. Chinedu came down the stairs in a navy blue suit, phone pressed to his ear, his laughter smooth and calculated. He kissed her forehead quickly, the way men kiss when their minds are elsewhere. "Don't wait up, my love," he said. "Meetings all day." Amara smiled faintly. "Meetings again?" He chuckled, adjusting his cufflinks. "That's how we keep the empire running, isn't it?" Then he was gone, polished shoes echoing through the marble corridor, leaving her in a silence that felt like the ghost of affection. Outside, Dennis Ikenna, the family driver, stood by the car, tall and composed in his grey uniform. As Chinedu entered the vehicle, Dennis caught Amara's gaze through the window. For a moment, their eyes met his full of quiet concern, hers carrying the weight of questions she could not ask. When the car disappeared beyond the gates, Amara walked to the study, her father's sacred space. She could still smell his cologne on the old leather chair, still hear his voice from years ago. Trust, but confirm. A woman who guards legacy must not close her eyes to silence. She smiled sadly, touching the ledger he'd left behind, pages of calculations, handwritten notes, and one small inscription in his steady script. "Amara, never forget, love is not blindness. Stewardship is responsibility." Those words had comforted her in grief. Now they unsettled her. That afternoon, while sorting through the company's old property files, she noticed something strange, a document marked "Not for Sale," stamped as transferred. The signature on it was familiar, yet slightly off. Her heart skipped. "Chinedu wouldn't," she whispered, trailing off. Outside, the sound of the car returning reached her. She quickly closed the file and leaned back, pretending to be calm. Chinedu walked in, radiant and confident, kissed her cheek, and told her about his meeting that went perfectly. She smiled, but her heart was now divided between faith and fear. As the night deepened, Amara stood by her bedroom window, watching the city lights blink below Hillcrest Estate. In the distance, a storm gathered quietly. She didn't know it yet, but the life she called perfect was about to crumble one secret at a time. And beneath her golden vows, shadows had already begun to move. The following morning arrived with an emptiness that Amara could not name. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that felt like someone holding their breath. Chinedu had left early again, dressed impeccably, his smile polished enough to hide sin. When the gates closed behind him, Amara lingered in the corridor, her gaze tracing the fading trail of his cologne. Something in her spirit whispered, "Follow the numbers, not the words." She made her way back to her father's study. The sunlight fell across the desk, illuminating the dust particles dancing in slow, golden swirls like spirits still keeping watch. She reached for the old black ledger again. This time, she noticed something she had missed before, a folded page tucked between the back covers. Inside it, written in Chief Henry's familiar bold handwriting, were the words, "If they ever silence the truth, go where the paper speaks. Your inheritance is not money, it is discernment. Confirm before you trust." Her eyes watered. Her father had always spoken in riddles, teaching her to think beyond comfort. She whispered to the air, as if he could hear her, "Papa, what are you trying to show me?" Downstairs, Dennis was polishing the car when he saw her through the window, fragile, thoughtful, standing still in the morning light. He paused. There was something sacred about her sadness, something that stirred his loyalty into a quiet ache. Later that day, while driving Chinedu to yet another meeting, Dennis noticed his boss behaving strangely, smiling too much, talking too softly into his phone. At a stoplight near Likora Island, Chinedu turned slightly away and whispered, "Don't worry, my love. Soon it will all be ours. Yes, even her shares. She won't suspect a thing." Dennis's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The words burned like fire. He said nothing, but his heart thundered. By evening, he stood outside the mansion gate, watching Amara's silhouette framed by the window. He wanted to tell her to shout the truth, to warn her, but who was he? A driver, a servant. Inside, Amara was battling her own storm. She had spent the afternoon reviewing company statements and noticed yet another irregular transfer as signature in Chinedu's name, where her approval was required. The puzzle pieces were forming, but the picture was too painful to accept. At dinner, Chinedu laughed as if nothing was wrong. "You look tired, my love. You worry too much about business. Let me handle things for a while." His voice was honey-coated, his charm deliberate. Amara nodded, swallowing words she could not yet prove. She watched his face carefully, the slight twitch when he lied, the glint of something darker behind his smile. When he excused himself to take another phone call, she quietly followed to the study doorway. His tone shifted once again, soft, romantic, deceitful. "Belinda, stop worrying. Once the documents are through, she'll have no power left. I promise." Amara froze. The name hit her chest like a blow. "Belinda?" She stepped back, trembling, her mind spinning. Her father's words echoed again. "Confirm before you trust." As she retreated to her room, her knees weakened. She pressed her hand over her heart, whispering to herself, "Lord, open my eyes. If truth will destroy me, let it do so quickly. I'd rather face pain than live inside a lie." Outside, thunder rolled over Likora Island. The first raindrops hit the glass as the storm finally broke, mirroring the one now raging within her soul. The marriage that once glittered had begun to rust, and the truth was just beginning to whisper its name. Rain had softened the night. A pale hush fell over Hillcrest Estate, broken only by the hum of power lines and the whisper of wet leaves brushing against the windows. Amara sat in her father's study again, her heart a battlefield of grief and disbelief. She could not sleep. The name Belinda echoed through her mind like a haunting melody, elegant, poisonous, familiar. Every detail of her husband's charm now felt like an illusion. The ledger lay open before her, papers scattered across the mahogany table. Her father's handwriting seemed to come alive beneath the lamplight. "Evil often comes dressed as comfort. Keep your peace, but never surrender your discernment." She traced those words with trembling fingers. For years, she had believed that love was sacrifice, that patience could heal anything. But now, patience felt like a slow death. A soft knock came on the door. "Madam?" It was Dennis. His voice was gentle but hesitant, the way a man speaks when standing on the edge of truth. "Come in," she said quietly. He stepped inside, rain still glistening on his uniform. His eyes carried both worry and reverence. "You've been awake for hours," he said. "Forgive me for saying this, but you don't look well." Amara gave a faint smile. "I suppose truth has a way of stealing sleep." Silence stretched between them, heavy, human, unspoken. The air smelled faintly of rain and cedarwood. Finally, Dennis took a step forward. "Madam, there's something I must tell you," he said, his voice low, urgent. "I've seen Oga Chinedu, not at business meetings, at hotels, more than once." Amara's eyes narrowed. Her pulse raced. "Be careful what you say, Dennis." "I know," he whispered. "That's why I've kept quiet." But today he was on a call. He spoke to a woman, Belinda. He said things no husband should say. He mentioned your shares, your accounts. Her chair creaked as she rose, disbelief flooding her face. "You're accusing my husband of theft, of adultery. You could lose everything for this." Dennis looked at her with steady eyes. "Then let me lose everything, but not my conscience." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The rain outside grew louder, pressing against the glass like a heartbeat. Then, in a sudden moment of desperation, perhaps fear, perhaps emotion, Dennis stepped closer and kissed her. It was brief, raw, and trembling with unspoken pain. Amara froze, eyes wide, breath caught between shock and fury. She pushed him back. "Dennis, how dare you? Do you know what you've done?" "I'm sorry," he stammered, eyes glistening. "It wasn't out of disrespect. It was the only way I could make you listen. You've been too calm, too trusting. He's planning something worse than betrayal." Her voice broke. "You've crossed every line." "Maybe," he said softly, "but not the one of loyalty. I would never hurt you, madam. I swore to protect your father's legacy, and you are that legacy." Amara's chest heaved. She turned away, clutching the edge of the desk for strength. "If this is a lie, Dennis, I'll have you dismissed by morning." "I know," he said quietly. "But if it's not, if I'm right, then please keep your eyes open. He's hiding something far bigger than his affair." His voice trembled with sincerity, but his face remained composed. Amara said nothing, only gestured him to leave. When the door closed behind him, she sank into her chair again. The room spun with confusion, anger, and fear. Her husband's lies, her driver's warning, her father's voice whispering from beyond. Thunder cracked outside, lighting up the ledger on the table. The words seemed to burn brighter. "Confirm before you trust." Amara covered her face with trembling hands. For the first time, the silence around her felt alive, whispering truths she was too afraid to name. The house that once felt like sanctuary had begun to turn into a cage, and every secret within its walls was one heartbeat away from revelation. The next morning dawned with deceptive peace. Likora's sky shimmered in pale blue. Birds sang over the manicured lawns of Hillcrest Estate, but inside the Okoro mansion, every word, every movement felt like glass waiting to crack. Amara woke early, her face pale but her mind sharpened by sleepless clarity. The memory of Dennis's kiss lingered like an unwanted ghost, shocking, reckless, yet strangely human. Beneath her anger, his words echoed with a truth she could not ignore. He's planning something worse than betrayal. By mid-morning, she sat at her father's desk, surrounded by files and documents. Her heart steadied as her eyes fell again on his handwriting. A wise woman fights with silence and proof, not with noise and emotion. She exhaled deeply. "Yes, Papa," she whispered. "You taught me stewardship. Now, I must protect what you built." Amara decided to test Chinedu's loyalty, not with confrontation, but with temptation. She would bait the serpent with the fruit of his own greed. When Chinedu returned home that evening, she was in the living room, dressed in soft ivory silk, calm and radiant, a picture of serenity. He smiled warmly, unaware that the woman before him was now studying him like an enemy in disguise. "My love," she began gently, "I've been thinking about Daddy's private accounts, the ones tied to his international investments. I may need your help to manage them." For a brief second, Chinedu froze. His eyes betrayed a flicker of hunger before his practiced smile returned. "Oh, darling, that's wise," he said smoothly. "You know, I've always said business is better handled by those who understand numbers. Leave it to me." Amara tilted her head, her gaze steady. "Perhaps, but you've been so busy lately. Are you sure you have time?" He laughed lightly. "For you, always." She smiled, not as a wife, but as a strategist who had just seen the mask begin to slip. Later that night, Amara pretended to fall asleep, but her heart remained awake, her mind alert. The moonlight filtered through the curtains as Chinedu crept quietly out of bed. She heard the faint sound of his phone unlock and his whispered tone from the hallway. "Yes, Belinda. It's true. She mentioned private accounts today. Hidden ones. 5 million, maybe more. We just need the access documents. I'll handle it. I promise." Amara's pulse quickened. Each word was a dagger, slicing through the last of her denial. His voice carried no hesitation, no remorse, only calculation and lust. He paused, then chuckled softly. "Don't worry, love. Once the transfers are complete, we'll vanish. She'll never know what hit her." Amara sat upright, tears burning her eyes. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. The man she once trusted with her life was plotting to steal not only her inheritance, but her peace, perhaps even her life. The lamp flickered faintly beside her, and the words of her father came again, steady as an anchor. "When evil wears a smile, let wisdom wear silence. Collect proof, then speak with power." She rose quietly, walked to her dressing table and opened a drawer. Inside was a small silver voice recorder her father had once used during board meetings. She held it in her palm, her reflections staring back through tears and resolve. "All right, Papa," she whispered. "If this is the storm, I will face it with thunder of my own." That night, Amara began documenting everything: his calls, his transfers, his movements. She moved through her home not as a broken wife, but as a woman reborn with purpose. Outside, the rain began to fall again, not violent this time, but steady and cleansing. The bait had been set, and the predator had just taken his first bite. Dawn broke slowly over Lekora City, washing the sky in muted grey. The first light touched the marble floors of the Okoro mansion, but for Amara, the new day brought no comfort. She sat alone in her bedroom, a voice recorder resting in her trembling hands. The events of the night replayed vividly Chinedu's hushed call, Belinda's laughter, the mention of her hidden accounts, and worst of all, his calm promise. She'll never know what hit her. Each word was a dagger, each breath a betrayal. She pressed play again, listening to his voice, confident, deceitful, familiar. Her heart ached not only for what he had done, but for the woman she used to be, the one who believed his smiles, defended his absences, and built dreams around his lies. Her tears came slowly this time, not out of weakness, but out of mourning. Mourning for her innocence. Mourning for the version of herself who once believed love was safety. Amara stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the estate. The gardens her father had planted still bloomed, untouched by the storms of deceit around them. The hibiscus flowers glistened with morning dew, as if the earth itself whispered, "Endurance is not silence." Her father's voice returned to her memory, warm and steady. A true steward does not run from storms. She builds shelter with wisdom. That was the moment she stopped crying. Amara walked to the mirror, her reflection pale yet fierce. She saw not a victim, but a woman standing at the crossroads of destruction and destiny. Her voice was calm when she spoke to herself. "If he can plan my death in silence, I will build my survival in silence too." She went to the study and opened the drawer where her father's ledger still lay. Her fingers brushed across the pages until she found the inscription she now lived by. Trust, but confirm. Then she called the only person she knew she could trust, Dennis. When he entered, she was sitting upright at the desk, her eyes clear, her tone steady. "Dennis," she said softly, "I heard him. Everything. He's not only betraying me, he's planning to take what my father left. And if I'm not careful, he'll take my life with it." Dennis's face darkened. "Madam, I swear on my mother's life, he won't touch you. What do you want me to do?" Her answer came like a command wrapped in grace. "You will watch him, every move, every meeting. I need records, phone numbers, anything. But you will act normal, loyal, silent, invisible. Can you do that?" "Yes, madam," he said, voice steady. "For your father's name and for yours." Their eyes met briefly, hers carrying quiet fire, his carrying steadfast resolve. Amara nodded once. "Then it begins today." Dennis bowed and left. When the door closed, Amara allowed herself one deep breath, the kind you take before walking into war. She opened her journal and wrote a single line. "If love turns to poison, let truth be my antidote." As the afternoon sun filled the study, Amara no longer looked like a woman betrayed. She looked like a strategist, a daughter of legacy, a woman awakening to her purpose. Outside, the rain clouds that had covered the city began to part, and a faint golden light spread across Hillcrest Estate. It was as if heaven itself had recognized her resolve. The perfect marriage had ended. The real story, the story of Amara's awakening, had just begun. 2 days passed. The house that once echoed with laughter now breathed only caution. Every corner felt watched, every word weighed. Yet beneath that silence, something new had begun to move. A partnership born not of love, but of loyalty and necessity. Amara had changed. She still smiled when Chinedu spoke, still served his meals, still kissed his cheek before he left for meetings. But behind those calm eyes now lived strategy, sharpened by betrayal, guided by her father's wisdom. Each night, she wrote in her private journal, "Play the fool to the foolish, but keep your eyes on truth." Dennis, too, played his role perfectly. He drove Chinedu daily, spoke little, and listened much. Every stop, every detour, every whispered call, he noted it down. To everyone else, he was just the quiet driver, but in truth, he had become Amara's eyes in the dark. On the third morning, after dropping Chinedu off at a business meeting, Dennis parked a few blocks away and waited. From the rearview mirror, he saw Chinedu step into Aurum Cafe, laughing softly as a woman in a red dress touched his arm. Her name matched the one Amara had heard Belinda. Dennis clenched his jaw. He wanted to confront him then and there, but he remembered Amara's command. No confrontation. Proof first. He took discreet photos, noted the time and location, and quietly followed as Chinedu and Belinda left together for Marina View Apartments, a luxury complex overlooking Likora Bay. From the car, Dennis watched the pair enter hand in hand. The lights flicked on in a third-floor suite. Inside, shadows moved behind drawn curtains, laughter, intimacy, betrayal made visible. By evening, Dennis returned to Hillcrest Estate. He found Amara in the study, the golden desk lamp casting soft light on her face. She didn't look up when he entered. She only asked quietly, "Did you find her?" "Yes, madam. I saw them together. She lives at Marina View Apartments, apartment 305. Her hand paused over the ledger. The confirmation stung, but her expression remained steady. "Did anyone see you?" "No, madam." "Good," she said softly, "because tomorrow I'm going there myself." Dennis looked startled. "Madam, that's dangerous. What if—" She cut him off gently, eyes cold but calm. "Danger already lives under my roof. I'd rather meet it face to face than pretend it doesn't exist." He hesitated, then nodded. "Then I'll go with you. If this is the truth we seek, we'll find it together." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She sat by her window, the moonlight tracing the edges of her face. The sea breeze from Likora Bay carried faint music from a distant street life going on, indifferent to her pain. Her thoughts drifted to Dennis, his loyalty, his quiet strength. He had risked his job, his peace, even his reputation for her father's name. She whispered to herself, "Some people are sent into our lives not to love us, but to protect us when love fails." The next morning came heavy with clouds. Amara wore a dark scarf and sunglasses, her face serene but her heart pounding with purpose. Dennis drove silently, glancing at her through the mirror once in a while. When they reached Marina View Apartments, he parked a street away. "Madame, are you sure?" he asked. Amara gave a single nod. "It's time I stop wondering and start knowing." Together, they crossed the street, one woman seeking truth, one man guarding her dignity. As the door to apartment 305 clicked open under Dennis's skillful hand, Amara's breath caught. The scent of perfume filled the air, familiar, intoxicating, hateful. And there, on the dresser by the window, glinting beneath a shaft of sunlight, lay the gold necklace Chinedu had given her on their anniversary. She froze. Her world tilted. Every ounce of denial crumbled. It was true. All of it. The husband she loved had not only betrayed her heart, he had traded it for vanity. Dennis stood beside her, silent but steady. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the ticking of a clock and the hum of the city below filled the room. Finally, Amara whispered, her voice breaking yet resolute. "He thinks I am blind, but now I see everything." As they quietly collected proof photos, receipts, and evidence, Amara no longer felt like prey. She felt like a storm quietly gathering its strength. The perfect wife had died that morning at Marina View Apartments. In her place, a new woman was born, one who would fight not with rage but with wisdom. The air inside the apartment was heavy with perfume and betrayal. Everywhere Amara turned, she saw reflections of herself, the woman her husband had pretended to adore. On the bed lay a silk scarf identical to one she owned. On the nightstand, a wristwatch engraved "To my beloved wife, C." Her fingers trembled as she lifted it. Dennis watched silently from the doorway. He had followed her through danger, but nothing prepared him for the quiet devastation now unfolding before his eyes. Amara's voice came out in a whisper. "Every gift he gave me, he bought twice, one for the wife, one for the lie." She opened a drawer and found a photo Chinedu and Belinda at a beach resort, smiling as if love were easy. For a moment, her knees weakened. She sank onto the edge of the bed and covered her mouth, fighting the sob that rose from somewhere ancient inside her chest. Dennis stepped forward. "Madam, please, you don't need to see more." Amara looked up at him, eyes red but alive. "No, Dennis, I need to see everything. Because only when truth finishes breaking you can you learn how to stand again." She wiped her tears and reached for her phone. Every piece of evidence, the necklace, the watch, the photos she captured calmly, methodically. Her breathing slowed, her hands steady. This was no longer the trembling wife of Hillcrest Estate. This was her father's daughter, reclaiming clarity in the midst of ruin. For the first time, Dennis spoke from his heart. "Chief Henry once told me, loyalty is seeing the truth and still choosing to protect what is right." "He'd be proud of you today." A faint smile curved her lips. "He taught us both well." They left the apartment the way they entered, silent and unseen. Outside, Likora Bay shimmered under a dull sun, the wind carrying the scent of salt and renewal. In the car, neither spoke for several minutes. The city passed by in blurred colors, children in uniforms, vendors calling out, buses honking in chaos. Life went on, unbothered by the secrets of the rich. Finally, Amara broke the silence. "Dennis, this pain will not destroy me. It will teach me. I've learned that the worst betrayal isn't when someone lies to you. It's when you stop trusting the truth inside yourself." Dennis nodded slowly. "And what will you do now, madam?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Now I prepare. The moment he thinks he's winning is the moment he will meet his reckoning." She looked out the window as the mansion's gates appeared ahead. The sky, once grey, had begun to clear. Light spilled across the windshield like a promise. That day, Amara did not return home as a woman broken by betrayal. She returned as a strategist with proof in her hands and purpose in her heart. The truth had set her free, and now it would set justice in motion. That night, rain whispered against the windows of Hillcrest Estate, the soft rhythm echoing through empty corridors. The mansion, once a symbol of happiness, now felt like a silent battlefield. But Amara no longer feared the silence. She had made peace with it, for silence had become her greatest weapon. She sat by the window, the evidence spread neatly on the coffee table. Photos of Chinedu and Belinda, the duplicated gifts, the recorded conversations. Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, older, wiser, and far more dangerous in her calmness. She whispered to herself, "I once thought love was trust. Now I know love without truth is slavery." Her mind replayed her father's words. Legacy is not the money you leave behind. It is the wisdom that protects what you've built. She stood and walked to his portrait on the wall, Chief Henry Nadozi, smiling with the kind eyes that had guided her through every storm. She touched the frame softly. "Papa," she murmured, "I will not let your name be buried under his deceit. I will protect what you built, even if it costs me everything." At that moment, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, a sound that felt like approval from heaven. Later that night, Dennis arrived quietly through the back gate. He found her still awake, surrounded by papers, her eyes focused and fierce. "Madam," he said softly, "you haven't rested." She smiled faintly. "Rest will come after justice." Dennis laid a small file on the table. "I found more, madam. Bank transactions. He's been moving money into a shell company under Belinda's name." Amara nodded slowly, the puzzle now complete. "Then the time has come." Dennis hesitated. "What will you do?" Amara looked up, her expression calm but resolute. "I'll let him finish digging his own grave. He thinks he's winning. That belief will make him careless. When the moment is right, the truth will speak for itself." Her voice carried no bitterness, only conviction. It was the sound of a woman who had risen above revenge. She opened her journal and wrote under that day's date, "When deceit becomes bold, wisdom must become patient." Then she looked at Dennis. "Tomorrow, we begin quietly. I'll act as though nothing has changed. You'll continue your duties. Record everything, every meeting, every call, every signature. When I move, it must be with proof no one can deny." Dennis bowed his head. "Yes, madam, for your father's legacy and for truth itself." As he turned to leave, she stopped him. "Dennis," she said gently, "you've done more than your duty. You've kept me standing when everything else tried to pull me down. My father chose the right man to protect this house." He smiled faintly, his voice low. "Chief Henry saw strength in you, madam. I only followed what he started." When he was gone, Amara looked once more at her father's portrait. The candlelight danced across his face, casting shadows that felt alive, as if he were watching, guiding, blessing. She took the recorder in her hands and whispered, "For the man I married, betrayal was business. But for me, truth will be legacy." Outside, the rain began to ease. The clouds thinned, and faint moonlight spilled across the garden, the same garden her father once planted with his bare hands. Amara pressed her palm against the window pane, her eyes steady, her spirit renewed. In that moment, she was no longer a wife mourning betrayal. She was a daughter honoring her father's name. Beneath the quiet of that night, Amara made a vow, not of marriage, but of rebirth. She would not scream. She would not break. She would wait, watch, and win. Morning light poured softly through the tall windows of Hillcrest Estate, painting the living room in serene gold. To anyone who saw her, Amara Henry-Okoro looked unchanged, elegant, calm, and radiant in her soft pastel gown. But beneath that grace lay precision, every word, every movement now part of a quiet game of chess. Her husband believed her blind. He was about to learn that silence does not mean ignorance, it means preparation. Chinedu came down the stairs humming, briefcase in hand. "You're up early, my love," he said, smiling. Amara returned the smile effortlessly. "I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about those private accounts we discussed, the ones my father left." Chinedu paused mid-step, his eyes flickering. "Oh? What about them?" "I think you're right," she said gently. "You understand business better than I do. Maybe I should let you handle them." He blinked once, twice, masking the thrill that ran through him. "Amara, you've made the right choice. I promise I'll protect your interests." Her expression was warm, trusting. "I know you will," she said. "I've already arranged a meeting tomorrow with the family lawyer, Barrister Mofe. You'll attend with me. I want everything done properly." Chinedu's mind raced. He wasn't expecting that twist, but he quickly recovered. "Of course," he said smoothly. "That's wise." As soon as he left, Amara's smile faded. Her pulse steadied, her eyes sharp. He had taken the bait. That evening, Dennis met her in the study, bringing a small device, a tiny recorder hidden within a pen. "Use this tomorrow," he said quietly. "It records up to 5 hours without detection." Amara accepted it, nodding. "You've done well, Dennis. The end of his game begins now." The next morning, the three of them met at Henry Cole Holdings, the same firm her father had built from nothing. The meeting room was large, lined with glass walls overlooking Lekora Island. Chinedu wore confidence like armor. Barrister Mofe, however, studied him with quiet suspicion. As they sat, Amara spoke softly. "Chinedu, this is where Papa used to finalize every partnership. He believed that transparency was the backbone of trust. Don't you agree?" Chinedu smiled, unaware that her pen was recording. "Of course, my dear. Trust is everything." Mofe cleared his throat. "Before we proceed, Mr. Okoro, I'll need the details of your new management plan, just to update the estate records." Chinedu leaned back, feigning ease. "Oh, that won't be necessary. I've already started moving some funds to more secure accounts. It's better for efficiency." Amara's heart pounded. There it was, the confession, smooth and unguarded. She kept her expression neutral. "That's thoughtful of you," she said softly. "But where are these accounts located?" Chinedu hesitated a fraction too long. "Private banks in Cape Verde," he said finally. "Safer offshore options." Mofe frowned. "Offshore? Without board consent?" Chinedu waved dismissively. "It's all under control." Amara smiled faintly and folded her hands. "I'm sure it is." When the meeting ended, Chinedu's phone buzzed. Belinda's name flashed briefly on the screen before he could hide it. Amara saw, and so did Mofe. The lawyer's eyes hardened. Outside, as Chinedu went to answer the call in the hallway, Mofe turned to Amara. "Madam," he said in a low voice, "whatever this man is planning, end it now. Chief Henry trusted you to carry his name. Don't let this ruin what he built." She met his gaze and whispered, "It won't." That evening, Dennis and Amara met again. They listened to the recording together, every word of Chinedu's arrogance captured in crystal clarity. When the part about the Cape Verde accounts played, Amara closed her eyes. Finally, proof no one could deny. She looked up at Dennis, her voice firm but gentle. "Tomorrow, he will believe he's getting everything. He will sign what he thinks is my consent letter, but it will be the document that ends him." Dennis hesitated. "And Belinda?" Amara's eyes turned cold. "Her greed will expose her too. When he falls, she will follow." She stood, her silhouette framed by the window's light, serene yet unyielding. "I'm not fighting for revenge, Dennis. I'm fighting for legacy. My father deserves peace." He bowed slightly. "And you, madam, deserve justice." That night, Amara placed the pen recorder beside her father's portrait and whispered, "Papa, I've done as you taught me." I confirmed, "Now truth will speak." As the city lights shimmered across Likora Island, she sat by the window in silence, her mind steady, her heart no longer trembling. The trap had been set. Tomorrow, deceit would walk into its own destruction smiling. The next day dawned brighter than usual, as if heaven itself had chosen to bear witness. Inside Henry Cole Holdings, preparations were underway for the quarterly board meeting. It would be Chinedu's first time addressing the executives without Amara's father's shadow looming over him. He believed this was his victory lap. But in truth, it was his execution. Amara arrived in quiet elegance, a white suit, pearls at her neck, calm as dawn before a storm. Dennis followed behind discreetly, holding a sealed brown envelope. Barrister Mofe was already there, expression unreadable. Chinedu entered moments later, full of charm and swagger. "My love," he said loudly, kissing her cheek for show. "I'm glad you could make it. This will be a historic day for us." Amara smiled faintly. "Indeed, it will." The boardroom filled with murmurs as senior executives took their seats. On the wall hung a large portrait of Chief Henry, his eyes watching silently, as though the spirit of integrity itself had come to oversee what was about to unfold. The meeting began. Chinedu rose confidently and spoke about restructuring, strategic accounts, and streamlined control. His words were polished, rehearsed every sentence dripping with arrogance disguised as intellect. When he finished, Amara stood. The room fell silent. "Thank you, my husband," she said softly. "You've worked hard to manage the company's affairs in my father's absence. But before we proceed, I'd like to share something for transparency." She gestured to Dennis, who stepped forward and placed the brown envelope before the board. Inside it were photos of Chinedu and Belinda, copies of offshore transfers, and the audio transcription of his own confession, neatly typed, dated, and verified by Mofe. Chinedu frowned. "What is this?" Amara's voice remained calm. "The truth. You said transparency was important, didn't you?" The lawyer pressed play on the recorder. Chinedu's voice filled the room, his own words from the previous day. "I've already started moving funds to more secure accounts. Offshore. She won't know a thing." Silence fell, heavy and electric. The executives stared, some in shock, others in quiet disappointment. Chinedu's face drained of color. "Amara, what are you doing? This is manipulation." Amara's gaze was unwavering. "No, this is stewardship. You plotted to destroy what my father built. You used love as a weapon and trust as a shield. But you forgot one thing. Deceit always records its own downfall." He lunged forward, desperate. "You can't prove those accounts exist." Barrister Mofe raised a document. "We already did. The banks confirmed the transfers this morning." Chinedu's composure cracked. He turned toward the board, eyes pleading. "You don't understand. It was all for the company." Amara interrupted softly. "For the company or for Belinda?" The mention of the name struck like thunder. Murmurs rippled through the room. Mofe opened another folder: photographs, hotel records, signed receipts. Every secret now laid bare beneath the same roof where Chinedu had once sworn eternal loyalty. Finally, Amara spoke again, her tone steady, almost compassionate. Chinedu, I didn't bring this here to humiliate you. I brought it to protect a legacy, one that began with my father's honesty and will continue with mine. You taught me the difference between love and blindness. For that, I will always thank you. She turned to the board. Effective immediately, I am assuming full control of Henry Cole Holdings. The law will handle the rest. Chinedu's knees weakened. The guards moved closer as Mofa handed the court order to the company secretary. He whispered her name once, Amara, but she didn't respond. Instead, she walked toward the large portrait of her father and paused. Papa, she whispered, just loud enough for herself. I kept the legacy safe. Behind her, Chinedu was escorted out, his empire of lies collapsing into dust. When the door closed, Amara released a deep breath. For the first time in years, the air felt clean. Dennis approached quietly. It's over, madam. She shook her head gently. No, Dennis, it's just beginning. The truth doesn't end when it's spoken, it begins when it restores. She looked out through the glass wall at the Licora skyline, sunlight breaking through clouds, the city alive again. And in that light, her reflection was no longer that of a betrayed wife. It was the reflection of a woman reborn. That day, Amara didn't just expose deceit. She redefined power not as vengeance, but as truth carried with grace. The news broke across Licora City by dawn. Headlines flooded social media and financial channels. Power couple's empire crumbles, CEO accused of fraud and betrayal. The story spread like wildfire, whispered in cafes, boardrooms, and salons. Those who once envied their marriage now whispered prayers for Amara, awed by her composure, her silence, her dignity. At Hillcrest Estate, the gates were no longer a symbol of prestige, but of consequence. The police cars parked neatly outside glistened under the morning sun. Inside, Chinedu-Okoro, once the darling of Licora's elite, stood pale and defeated as officers moved through the living room collecting files and electronics. He tried to speak, but his voice was hollow. Amara, please, we can fix this. I did it for us. She stood by the staircase, her posture calm, her eyes unreadable. No, Chinedu, you did it for yourself, and now you'll answer for it. When the officers led him toward the door, he looked back one last time, perhaps hoping to find softness in her face, perhaps realizing too late that his greatest loss wasn't wealth, but the woman who once believed in him. Amara didn't look away, nor did she gloat. Her silence was more powerful than 1,000 accusations. As the gate closed behind him, she whispered quietly, "Love built on lies always ends in handcuffs." Meanwhile, in another part of Licora, Belinda Amar sat trembling in her apartment. The same news reports played on her television, her face blurred, but mentioned, her name whispered by reporters as the mistress behind the scandal. Her phone buzzed non-stop calls, threats, shame. The glamour she once flaunted had vanished, leaving behind only emptiness and fear. She walked to the mirror, her makeup smudged, her reflection hollow. "He promised me everything," she muttered, voice cracking, "and now I have nothing." In that moment, Belinda realized the lesson that the world often forgets: greed never rewards loyalty, and borrowed love never lasts. Back at Hillcrest, Amara sat quietly in the garden her father once tended. The air smelled of jasmine and rain. Dennis stood nearby, hands folded respectfully. "It's over now, madam," he said softly. Amara smiled faintly. "No, Dennis. It's only complete when the wound becomes wisdom." She picked up a fallen flower and twirled it between her fingers. "Do you know what hurts the most? It's not that he betrayed me. It's that I allowed myself to ignore the truth because it was easier than facing pain." Dennis nodded slowly. "Pain has a strange way of introducing us to the truth, madam. Chief Henry used to say that." Amara looked up, her eyes shining with both sadness and peace. "Yes, and now I finally understand him. Truth doesn't protect us from heartbreak, it prepares us for freedom." They walked together through the garden in silence. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, alive again after the long storm. That evening, Amara addressed the company board. She didn't speak as a victim or widow of deceit, she spoke as a leader. "We will rebuild," she said, her voice steady. "Not just the finances, but the trust. Our foundation will be integrity. That was my father's dream, and it will be mine." The board members applauded softly, moved by her grace. In that moment, Amara Henry-Okoro ceased being a name whispered in scandal. She became a symbol of strength without bitterness, of justice without vengeance. As dusk fell over Likora, Dennis approached her once more by the fountain. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Madam, your father would be proud." Amara smiled gently, her voice barely above a whisper. "So am I, Dennis. For the first time, I am proud of myself, too." She looked toward the setting sun, its golden light bathing her in warmth. The city beyond the gates carried on louder, restless, unknowing, but in that quiet garden, peace had finally returned. The perfect marriage was gone, but the perfect lesson remained. That truth, once revealed, does not destroy it, redeems. A month had passed since the scandal. The city of Likora had moved on new headlines, new gossip, new distractions. But for Amara Henry-Okoro, time no longer revolved around the noise of the world. It moved with peace, with prayer, with purpose. Hillcrest Estate no longer echoed with deceit. The house breathed differently now, lighter, calmer. The scent of jasmine drifted from the garden where her father once planted the first seedling. It was the only place where Amara truly felt him near. Every morning, she walked barefoot through the dew-kissed grass, the soft earth grounding her. The hibiscus blossoms lifted their faces toward the sun, and with each step, she whispered a silent gratitude. "I survived, and because I survived, I've been reborn." Dennis remained faithfully by her side, but his presence was no longer that of a protector alone. He had become part of her quiet rebuilding. He managed the estate's staff, coordinated with the lawyers, and ensured the company's transition flowed smoothly. One afternoon, as the golden light of sunset spilled through the windows, Amara called him to the garden. "Do you remember what my father used to say about storms?" she asked softly. Dennis nodded. He said storms are God's way of pruning trees, cutting away what doesn't belong, so new life can grow. Amara smiled. And he was right. My storm came as betrayal, but it left behind wisdom. I've learned that pain doesn't break you, it reveals you. She walked towards the marble fountain where her father's name was engraved. Chief Henry Nadozi, builder of legacies, believer in truth. In her hand, she carried a small silver watch, the one that had once belonged to Chinedu, the one she had found the night their destinies collided. It act was no longer a symbol of heartbreak, but of transformation. She placed it at the base of the fountain, beside a single white lily. "Papa," she whispered, "the clock has stopped where deceit ended and peace began." Tears welled in her eyes, but they were no longer tears of sorrow, they were tears of release. She looked upward, her voice trembling with grace. "I kept the legacy safe, Papa. Not just your company, but the values you planted in me. Truth, strength, and dignity." A soft breeze stirred the flowers, as though the earth itself answered in approval. Dennis stood a few steps behind, silent and reverent. He had watched her fall, break, and rise again, and in that rising he had found his own purpose renewed. Amara turned to him and smiled. "Dennis, you kept your promise. You protected my father's name and mine. Thank you." He bowed slightly, his voice low. "You didn't need protection, madam. You only needed to remember who you were." She looked out over the garden, the sun melting into the horizon, bathing everything in golden light. The sound of children playing beyond the gates floated faintly through the air, a reminder that life always continues, even after chaos. Amara spoke softly, almost to herself. "Once, I thought love was what made life beautiful. Now I know it is truth that gives love its beauty." She turned and began walking back toward the mansion, her figure tall, graceful, radiant in the evening glow. Each step she took felt lighter, freer. The camera of life panned wide Hillcrest Estate, surrounded by lush gardens, the fountain glimmering, the silver watch resting beside the lily. The wind carried the faint sound of her father's voice, echoing through memory and time. "Confirm before you trust. Protect what is pure. And when love fails, let truth lead." Amara paused once more at the door, glancing back at the garden, the place of both her heartbreak and her healing. She smiled, serene and strong. The perfect marriage had died, but in its ashes bloomed something eternal. A woman who discovered that the truest vow is the one made to yourself, to never let the darkness of others dim your own light. The screen of her life faded slowly to the soft glow of dawn. Birds began to sing again. And over Lakora City, the first rays of a new morning touched everything with grace.